All right, and welcome back to MLS Law Show. We are covering the part 2 of day 3 of the Ethan Crumley Miller hearing. Thank you all. We've been jumping around a bit. We did part 1 earlier, then we went over and checked out Jody Arias, as we always do. Jody Arias at noon. And to the several of you that are with us still, thank you very much for jumping back. The expert is in the chat. And of course, Farrell is in the chat, recommending everyone go sub to everyone but me. Thank you very much, Farrell, for that. Eris. Yep, there wasn't anyone waiting. That's okay. You know what? They're going to come back because they hit the notification button. And look, the numbers are already climbing. So we're good. But I thank you all and very much for your concern. But I have to eat. And I have to deal with work, and I have to deal with kids and all that stuff. So I was going to take the 30 minutes that I had, or 28 minutes exactly, to try to take care of some of this stuff. And I still started early. But welcome Jamie in the chat. Farrell's always a good supporter of everybody, and I appreciate it. I don't have a problem with Farrell sharing links in my chat. Maybe not to everyone, but oh wait, why did my chat not go through? Oh, I put in here, I said I'll be a few more minutes, I'm eating, and apparently that didn't go through. So you guys didn't know. You didn't know I was watching you and responding to you all. Why didn't that go through? Anyways, we're here now. Eating is overrated, right? I know. Past 30 minutes was boring. I'm sorry. But as you can see, we are exactly where we left off. We're going to continue with this, the beautiful doctor, the good doctor, right? Today with this insanity that is the doctor and his egg dropping. YouTube is being a butt. Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, YouTube is being weird today. I don't know why my chat didn't go through, but I was trying to keep you guys up to date as to what I was doing. Anyways, shall we continue? There's 60 of us now. We shall continue with the doctor. Hopefully, everyone is aware that we're going live now. We're still 2 minutes early, but I really have nothing else to say. So we'll just start.
Subjective sources. Sure. Objective sources are sources that are devoid of my opinion and that exist. Subjective sources are sources that where I can infuse my opinions and thoughts. That's my definition.
The doctor, it's not just your opinion, it's also the defendant's opinion. You're looking for something that is not based on his opinion or yours, that's objective. So you'd agree, like, the videos are objective. The video is the video, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But the defendant's statements, your take on them, that's not objective. You agree with me?
Okay.
And what I'm asking you is, do you have any other objective sources that Mr. Crumbley engaged in an unusual behavior that would be typical of psychosis in around the time of the alleged offense?
I do not.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up, though, folks. If you're sitting here and you're listening to me, I would very much appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up, share on social media, tell your friends, and subscribe.
All right, moving down that paragraph, doctor, it says, this is Dr. Anna Kerr's analysis, there is ample audio and video recordings of Mr. Crumbley both immediately before and immediately after the shooting. In none of the videos that this writer reviewed does he appear to be in the midst of a psychotic episode. In the videos immediately after the shooting, the defendant is observed communicating clearly with the police in a way that appears rational and relevant, suggesting reality-oriented thought processing. Are you aware of the video that she's referring to?
I am not, sir.
Okay, did you review videos of him shortly after the shooting?
I did not see the videos of him outside of the school.
So you did not see the videos of him in the sheriff's department vehicle?
I did not, sir.
And you did not see the videos of him sitting at the sheriff's department substation?
I did not.
Would you agree that those are objective sources that would allow you to get a look into what the defendant was, how he was behaving, and whether he was engaged in unusual behavior around the time of the shooting?
I do agree, sir.
And you did not see those, correct?
I did not see those videos.
Thank you, Farrell.
She goes on to note in that time frame, the defendant does not mention demons, paranoia, hallucinations, or
Hey,
delusions.
Kurt, I sent you a link for this morning. You want a link for now? I'll send it to you if you want to jump on.
Asked of him in a coherent manner. He does not appear to sound or behave in a disorganized manner. You don't have a basis to disagree with that. You didn't watch those videos.
I actually agree with that opinion, sir.
Okay. He follows commands, answers all questions in a coherent manner. You agree?
I do agree, sir.
All right. Also, there's documentation from the jail, which I think largely consists of Dr. Kadir's reports. Also, the reports that deputies do when they go by on watch and they make notations about the defendant. Did you see those reports?
I did, sir.
And the defendant was constantly monitored, correct?
Yes, sir.
Either continuously or every 15 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
And so those observations are recorded by the officers that are watching him, right?
Cool. Whenever.
Yes,
Would you agree with Dr. Anaker that there's no evidence that Mr. Crumbly exhibited thought process? I'm sorry, that the videos tend to show that he exhibited thought processes that were grossly organized, goal-directed, and linear with behavior that was appropriate. Jail staff did not observe him to be responding to internal stimuli. Would you agree with that?
No, sir.
Okay.
This is at 1.25. Not 1.5. This is at 1.25. If it's too fast, let me know. But I just wanted to make sure that we got through everything. We've been playing at 1.25 most of the morning, anyways. And then Kurt, yeah, let me know if it's going to be probably an early stream for me today because I do have afternoon activities. But if I'm going, I sent you the link, so jump on in.
Tell me why you disagree.
The entire courtroom watched 5 videos of Ethan Crumbly in psychosis.
Okay. And I understand that's your testimony, doctor. That comes much later. Right now, I'm talking about around the time of the shooting.
Okay.
And for
And what I'm
everyone
asking
else
you
who's
is,
jumping in,
Dr. Anaker is talking about
I see there's more people since I started. Just to give you a heads up, this is still the cross-examination of the defense's third expert witness on Ethan Crumbly's Miller hearing. The purpose of the Miller hearing is to determine whether or not Ethan Crumbly, as a juvenile, is so irredeemable that it would not be cruel and unusual to sentence him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Essentially, he's got to get life. But the default is he will get paroled at some point, or at least he'll be eligible for parole at some point. And the state's trying to say that he shouldn't be eligible for that. And in order to do that, they need to meet these 5 Miller standards. Is he redeemable? What's the heinousy of the crime? Things like that. I don't have them all up. Actually, I can put my banner up. That might work. Yeah. And so that's what they're trying to do. The state's trying to overcome this presumption. The state called a bunch of fact witnesses, no experts. The defense has now called its third expert. And the first 2 were really good. This one, not so much. When you bring an egg and a bowl in the court and drop the egg to signify that a brain could get injured by a fall, I think your credibility has gone way downhill. And this is currently cross-examination. I should put that banner up too. Geez. Of this expert, and he is just getting decimated. So that's where we're at. And this is current from today. We're about an hour behind, but they're going to go to lunch, and then we're going to get caught up, and this guy's still on the stand. So we'll see where we end up at the end of the day. This might continue into a day 4.
On the time of the shooting, would you agree that the defendant exhibited thought processes that were grossly organized, goal-directed, and linear with behavior that was appropriate? Jail staff did not observe him to be responding to internal stimuli. I'm talking about in that time frame right around the shooting, within a few days.
So I do not understand the question. I don't know if you're talking about why he was in the school, at the sheriff's office, or the Oakland County Jail. I want to answer you, but I want to understand what it is that you're asking of me, sir.
Right. Let's start from where the shooting video starts until he leaves Children's Village.
Yes,
right.
sir.
During that time, would you agree that he's exhibiting thought processes that were grossly organized, goal-directed, and linear with behavior that was appropriate, and jail staff did not observe him to be responding to internal stimuli? Do you agree with that?
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He did not want to answer that question. So the question was clearly after he was arrested, because remember, they played the video of him acting out with the spit hood on and everything, and it looked really dramatic, and he's, carrying on and stuff. And they're like, okay, well, from that point, when he was moved to Children's Village and all of his time in Children's Village, which is the juvenile detention facility for Oakland County, was he acting essentially normally? And this guy did not want to answer yes, but he eventually did. So
can you briefly explain, Doctor, what does responding to internal stimuli mean?
So an internal stimuli is responding to auditory hallucination. And what that means is that it happens in an episodic manner. So I could be experiencing internal stimuli right now, and then I can step away, and I am not experiencing internal stimuli. It is a very dynamic process.
So, doctor, I understand that you're saying that when someone responds to internal stimuli, that can come and go, right?
Absolutely.
They might one day be doing it or one moment, and then later they're not, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what I'm asking you is, what does that look like when they are responding to internal stimuli? What does that mean?
So it varies from person to person. Some people may smile inappropriately, and some people may try to mask what they're hearing by pretending that they're not hearing. And then you have some folk who may actually respond to internal stimuli.
Okay.
So people react differently based on the source of that stimuli.
All right. And you would agree what that boils down to for the layperson is someone is seeing or hearing things that aren't there, right? It's something that is internal to them and not in the world that all of us are observing.
Yeah, it's their perception.
Like,
so, doctor, I think you
like ghosts being in the house and things like that, I think is what he's talking about. Because that was a particular message that Ethan sent to his parents 6 months before the school shooting.
testified that you believe the defendant has a mental illness that constitutes a substantial disorder, correct?
I did.
And that you believe it significantly impaired his judgment, behavior, and capacity to recognize reality?
I did.
Okay. And doctor, is it your testimony that this defendant is not criminally responsible?
My testimony is that Ethan Crumbley is mentally ill.
I understand that. And now I'm asking the next question, which is it your testimony that he's not criminally responsible?
I'm going to object. That is not what we are here to argue today. We are not arguing criminal responsibility. The defendant has pled and we withdrew our insanity defense notice.
May I respond, Your Honor? I think it's very important whether this doctor thinks that he is not criminally responsible. If that's his opinion, I think the court can take that into consideration.
If your objections overruled, I'll also make it to you.
So the question of insanity, guilt by or not guilty by reason of insanity is not an issue. I feel like the defense did a bad thing by presenting this doctor because they essentially opened the door to whether or not he's mentally ill. And this is where the state's going to start now exploring. And that's going to be a bad thing for this particular defendant, especially when we're talking about potentially reforming him.
So Ethan Crumbley has pled guilty to the crime.
By Farrell.
Facts are the facts, and they cannot be taken back, sir.
Doctor, that's not my question to you. My question is, you understand the legal concept of criminal responsibility, and you yourself have prepared reports regarding criminal responsibility in other cases, correct?
That's correct.
So you understand the legal standard.
Yes, sir.
You know, the first step is mental illness that's a substantial disorder that significantly impairs the defendant's judgment, behavior, capacity to recognize reality, right?
Yes, sir.
And you've already testified, in your opinion, he meets that criteria, right?
Yes, sir.
And now I'm asking you the second step. Do you believe that he's criminally insane?
I believe he's mentally ill, and his mental illness played a factor into the events of the shooting.
So, doctor, it's a yes or no question. Do you believe he's criminally insane, or do you not believe that?
He's already pled guilty, sir.
Please answer the question directly, Doctor.
Why is he bad? It's bad.
Is it your opinion that this defendant meets the legal definition of criminal insanity? Is that your opinion?
I don't think so, sir.
Okay. And why is that?
Can you
Because he
repeat
could
that question, please?
understand
Why
what
is it that you
he
believe
did
he suffers
wrong.
from a statutorily defined mental illness, but you do not believe that he's criminally insane?
So I believe he has a diagnosable mental illness, and he engaged in a horrific act which took the lives of several students, and he's pled guilty. And my understanding is that he was found to not be criminally insane, and I will go with that opinion, sir.
Okay. And you know from your own work what the second step is after mental illness, right? What is the second step? What is it that this defendant does not have that makes him not criminally that makes him not insane?
Sure. It's a very high standard one has to prove that a mental illness was directly related to the act that followed.
Right. And so, doctor, the legal term is that the defendant, in fact, appreciates the nature and quality of the wrongfulness of his conduct. That's the standard, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, to the layperson, it means the defendant knew right from wrong, right?
That is correct.
All right. So, doctor, one of the things you rely on.
I don't know why he's
to
fighting this so
substantiate
much.
the mental-
I feel like if the defendant knew right from wrong, it would be better because then he could potentially be reformable, right? That's one of the big things. Can this guy, this teenager, be reformed at some point in the future to the point that he will no longer be a danger to society?
illness and the psychosis you talk about are the text messages that you include in your report, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you say that your the statement is without question, someone who's mentally ill is substantiated by those text messages. And I want you to turn to the pages of your report that include those. That's pages 8 through, I think, 21.
You can just reference which report, the June report.
The June report. Thank you, Your Honor. And I'm going to try to stick to the June report now.
What page, sir?
So the text messages, I think, start at the bottom of page 7 of your report.
Okay,
And they're 14 pages, and I think you've agreed with me, ballpark about 200 text messages, correct?
yes, sir.
How many text messages did you actually review?
I don't have an exact number, and so I can't give you an answer to that. What I do know, I reviewed, And
None of
again,
them are my
I
buddy.
don't want to give,
I know them personally, but I don't know them. Or I know them professionally. I don't know them personally.
an incorrect answer, but I'm thinking I saw 20,000 text messages.
Okay. So how did you decide out of all the text messages, which ones to include in your report?
I decided based on the fact of just logic and process of elimination because it's not appropriate. I didn't feel for me to include 20,000 text messages in a report. It wouldn't serve anyone any good. So I looked for themes. What are the themes in the text messages? And I included those that I felt were in that theme of mental illness.
So Doctor, that's actually very remarkable to me. You reviewed 200, you pulled 200 text messages out of roughly 20,000, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And you said you chose themes that sort of brought out what you were trying to illustrate and that supported your opinion that the defendant suffers from mental illness, correct?
Okay.
And Doctor, all of the texts you cite are from one date, April 5th of 2021. Do you want to take a look at your report?
Certainly. That is correct, sir.
So Wolfram, Ethan Crumley, the school shooter, pled guilty. And he pled guilty straight up to the charges. He was charged as an adult, and he pled guilty as an adult. So there is no trial. What this is sort of a pre-sentencing hearing because the state wants to sentence him to life without the possibility of parole. And under the Miller ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court and various other, particularly like 4 or 5 different rulings from the Michigan Supreme Court, they have outlined a very narrow range in which a juvenile could be sentenced rather to a life term without parole. And the standard is kind of ticking along at the bottom. But the state has to bring a motion, and they have to convince the court by clear and convincing evidence, essentially that this child is irredeemable. And there's no possibility that he could ever be reformed and readmitted into society. The idea is that because juveniles don't have full development brain function and things like that, that there's always kind of a hope that they could be reformed. So the whole purpose is all of this is to determine whether or not at some point, 25, 30 years down the road, Ethan Crumley could face a parole board with the possibility of getting let out on parole. So that's the whole purpose of this. It has nothing to do with guilt or innocence or anything. Doesn't have to do with his mental health. I mean, ancillarily it does because they have to determine whether or not he could be reformed. So like the state or the defense's first witness was the warden of the juvenile facility. And we're talking about all these programs and therapy and stuff like that they have for the kids. So that's the idea.
You cite about 1% of all the text messages and all from the same date. And you indicate that 1% one day substantiates mental illness, correct? That's the basis of your opinion.
So the basis of, no, that is not correct, sir.
Okay. How come you didn't cite any other text messages, Doctor?
A number of the text messages were not germane to the report. They were just innocuous. I can give you examples if you want, sir.
Let's turn
And
this
feel
around.
free to
Doctor. You
ask
agree with me, you
questions
cited
in the
only
chat,
from one
guys.
day, correct, in your
Yes.
report? Okay. And what you're telling me is the only germane texts you found were from one day.
That is correct.
My opinion is that all children should have the possibility of parole. You can sentence them to life, but leave that window open because you never know what the future is going to hold, especially for children at his age and younger. So that's my opinion.
And it's like, I got to do the math.
Just because
7
they're
months
eligible doesn't mean they're going to get
before
out
the
either.
shooting, correct?
That is correct.
And so everything you saw, you say that one day, that's the one I'm going to hang my hat on. That's the one that tells me that he suffered from a mental illness when he committed the shooting, right?
That is not correct.
Okay. Explain that to me.
My opinion and my conclusions are based on my testing.
All right. Thank you, doctor. So, doctor, someplace in your report, I think it's after the text messages, you referenced the time of those texts. Do you recall that?
Yes, this is judge. No jury for this. The judge will make the call.
It's page 22, and it's the third bullet
So,
point at the top.
if you guys rewatch this, especially day one, there's a lot of irrelevant questioning. I say that the state brought fact witnesses because they only brought fact witnesses, and a lot of it's irrelevant to whether or not the child is reformable. And so the judge actually made a particular ruling saying, I can sift through what's relevant and what's not relevant. So the judge is allowing a lot of leeway here in this hearing.
That is correct.
And you say most messages were sent around 4 a.m.,
Of course
correct?
you did, Flex.
Yes, sir.
And that was remarkable to you and significant, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Doctor, are you familiar with something called UTC?
Can you
Those
spell
are
it out to me, sir?
Lightsabers for
You-
Bobby.
The letters U, T, and C, it stands for Coordinated Universal Time. I know the letters are out of order, but it stands for Coordinated Universal Time. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know if I am, sir.
All right. So, doctor, you based your assumption that these messages were sent around 4 a.m. based on the little time indicators for each message, right? They each say 4, 5, 20, 21. They start at 3:50 a.m. and they go until 4:41 a.m. You see that?
Okay, I agree, sir.
And doctor, in fact, those every one of them says afterwards UTC plus 0, right?
Okay,
And you agree with that we're on Eastern time, right?
that is true.
And are you aware that Eastern time is UTC minus 4?
Okay,
Are you aware of that?
okay, sir. Yes.
So those messages were in fact sent between 11:50 a.m. and 12:41. I'm sorry, 11:50 p.m. and 12:41 a.m. Are you aware of that?
I am not, but I agree.
So your assumption that they were sent around 4 a.m. is it's just that's an assumption you made and it's just not true.
Okay.
Doctor, you testified that you have seen the defendant recently, at least during your testing, and that you agree he is competent to stand trial.
I did.
Okay. Doctor, you were played the jail camera video, right, that you've discussed where the defendant is showing signs of distress and upset, and I think you say psychosis, right?
Yes, sir.
Doctor, the prosecution brought that to your attention, to the defense attention, right? We're the ones who said this is concerning behavior, right?
That is correct.
All right. And you then reviewed that, didn't you?
That is correct.
And you consulted with counsel and you were asked your opinion, right?
That is correct.
About whether this person was psychotic or competent and able to proceed with this hearing, right?
That is correct.
And you said he is, right?
Yes, sir.
You also would agree with me that that behavior comes after the defendant had been in the jail in a one-person cell for 16 months.
That is correct.
And you would agree with me that the defendant was not behaving that way right before, during, or after the shooting. You'd agree with me.
Okay.
Would you agree with that?
I don't have evidence otherwise, so yes.
Okay. He wasn't behaving that way when you interviewed him, right?
He was not.
He hasn't been behaving that way during this hearing, right?
That is correct.
And so this is the only incident you're aware of where the defendant exhibited that kind of behavior.
Can you rephrase that question, please, sir?
This is the only incident you're aware of where the defendant has exhibited that kind of behaviver.
Are you referencing those 5 videos?
I'm referencing, yes. Are you aware those are all from the same incident, all from one date?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm going to tell you that they are, but what I'm asking is outside of those 5 videos, are you aware of any other instance where the defendant was behaving like that or showing those symptoms?
Actually, I am.
Okay.
There are serious concerns about suicidal ideation, which is why he was on suicidal watch.
So, doctor, those were instances where he had something in his cell, might be trying to tie it to a speaker. He said he wasn't suicidal, but they were concerned, right?
That is correct.
There were a few times when they thought he needed to be observed constantly because he showed concerns about suicide, right?
That is correct.
That's not the same as psychosis, is it?
Actually, for one to try to harm themselves is an expression of mental illness.
I asked you about psychosis, doctor.
Psychosis means a break from reality.
Right. And someone thinking about killing themselves is not broken from reality, are they?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you're saying thoughts of suicide are a symptom of psychosis. That's your opinion. That's the testimony you're offering to the court today.
I am.
So, doctor, in the video, you expressed the defendant saying something about God or why didn't you stop it, right?
Yes, sir.
And in your opinion, what do you think he's referring to?
He's saying, God, why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you save her?
Right. And what do you think he's referring to?
Asking God, why did you allow this shooting to take place, even though he did the shooting?
This
That
is
was
his
very
reading of the
problematic.
chicken bones and tea leaves.
Doctor, you agree with me. It's your opinion. He's talking about the shooting, and he's saying, why did you let the shooting happen, right?
Yes,
Dear
sir.
God. And so you agree with me, that upset was not something that predated the shooting. That's a result of the defendant's own actions. You agree with me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Doctor, you say on page 25 into page 26 of your report, again,
See, so I'm watching this because of the parents' trial, and the prosecutor is arguing this is a result of the child's own actions, right? That stance is going to be 180 degrees off in about 3 months when this same prosecutorial team brings the parents to trial. And that's going to be interesting to see how the defense in that case uses the testimony in this case to impeach a lot of these witnesses. This witness probably won't be on the stand, but other witnesses will be.
the June report, that the defendant reports extreme sorrow. The very last few words of page
And every
25
ghost
to page
hunter on
26.
television is also insane too.
You see that?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by that?
I have here that, and if I may read this to you, sir,
Please.
I hope we're talking about the same thing. He reports nightmares, depression, and extreme sorrow over the outcome of his actions.
Right. And so what I'm asking you, that's the sentence I'm talking about, is when you say extreme sorrow, what do you mean?
Ethan is slowly coming to grips with what he did and the horror that transpired at Oxford School, and he's expressing extreme sorrow.
Right. So, doctor, though, that's not what you say at the end of that sentence, is it? You say that he's expressing extreme sorrow over the outcome of his actions.
Correct?
Right. But you don't know what outcome is. Outcome singular, right? And you don't know what outcome that is. So is he extremely sorry that he's in jail?
So Ethan took the life of 4 innocent people, and that is not okay.
We agree on that, doctor. What I'm saying is you don't include in your report that he expressed extreme sorrow for taking the lives of 4 students and shooting 7 other people and terrorizing the school. You don't say that. You say he experiences that over the outcome of his actions. And what I'm saying is, okay, could be that he killed 4 people. It also could be that he's in jail, right?
That is a
It
possibility.
could be that his parents are in jail, right?
I don't know that to be a fact, but okay,
But he could be, right?
it's possible.
Okay. And he could be experiencing sorrow that he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison.
So we're speculating, but okay.
All right. And what I'm saying is, as you sit here today, you can't tell us which one it is. You don't note it in your report. You just note he was experiencing extreme sorrow over the outcome of his actions.
That's what I have in my report, sir.
Did you observe the defendant's demeanor during the testimony in this hearing?
I did not, sir.
You did not.
No, sir.
When the video of the shooting was shown?
I did not.
When the 2 students were testifying?
I did not.
He just had his head down.
Do you think that's important?
Do I think what's important?
Whether the defendant feels anything when he hears that testimony or sees that video?
I think it's important.
Doctor, I want to talk to you a little bit about remorse. I think you say that the defendant is sorrowful that he's experienced some remorse. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Doctor, when did the defendant torture baby birds?
I don't have the date in front of me, but there's the videos that he made.
Do you know roughly when that was?
I know it was before May. It was
Right, okay.
before I interviewed him, but I didn't memorize the date.
Wait, May of 2023 or May of 2021?
Sir, I do not know the date, and I do not want to give an incorrect answer.
You watched the bird video, right?
I did.
And you're aware of his torturing baby birds, but you don't know about the time frame for that.
That is correct.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Just one second. On page 26 into page 27, you mentioned several times the stressful experience. You see that?
On page 26.
All right, so page 26 into page 27. 1 second here. You mentioned several times, quote, the stressful event. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And then you conclude that the defendant probably has PTSD, correct?
Yes, sir.
What is the stressful experience you're referring to in your report?
He doesn't know. Look at that face. He has no clue.
All right, Doctor, I'm sorry, we're looking at page 26 into page 27 of your report.
He didn't even
And
answer.
you refer to the stressful experience. You refer to it four times. You see that?
Yes.
What is the stressful experience you're referring to in your report?
So those are actually questions on the PTSD questionnaire that he endorsed.
And what I'm asking you is, you refer to it multiple times, and I'm asking you, what is the stressful experience?
Of dealing with the consequences of his actions, of
Okay.
dealing with depression, dealing with nightmares, dealing with his current circumstance.
So that's a result of the shooting he committed, not a cause of the shooting he committed. Would you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So his PTSD, his post-traumatic stress is from the shooting that he committed.
Yes, sir.
Judge, I have quite a few more questions. I did not realize time is.
Sure, we will take a natural break. Please continue.
All right, Doctor, you indicated at the bottom of page 27 that the
Yeah, if you watch day 1 and day 2, day 1 particularly, there were a lot of his journal entries, a lot of his text messages and things like that. And then there's also an audio recording that we started to replay at the beginning of this morning's stream, but all of it is in, I think, day 1. I don't remember if it's the morning or afternoon. He's definitely a troubled individual. For the parents' case, it's a question of did they know? Because it sounds like they didn't really know about any of this stuff. So,
defendant, quote, feels guilty all the time. You see that?
I'm getting there, sir.
Page 27.
What part of the page you're looking at?
It is almost the last, it's the second to last sentence on the page.
Yes,
Notable responses to this inventory were the following: I feel guilty all the time, right?
that is correct.
And you don't indicate what he feels guilty for, right?
He actually, this is in reference to the Beck Depression questionnaire. There's a series of questions on there.
Okay.
So the prompt was, do you feel guilty at all sometimes? And so he endorsed that.
All right.
He feels guilty all the time.
All right. So that's just a questionnaire, and it doesn't say what do you feel guilty about. It says
and I
you
don't
feel
think
guilty
you
all the
met
time.
with Ethan directly, and that was part of the issue during the foundational stuff of this witness. I was like, why are we even calling this guy? This is going to be bad, and it turned out to be extraordinarily bad.
Correct.
Okay. Judge, I do have another series of questions. I think this is for me a natural break, if the court is sorry with that.
Sure. We can go ahead and take a break. We'll go ahead and break for lunch, but I'm not going to take an extended break as we're going to finish this hearing today. And so with that being said, we will return at 1 o'clock and we'll continue with the cross-examination at that time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you can take a
Yeah, so we're going to fast forward because they are already back from lunch. So we are going to fast forward now. Yeah, but this expert is not very good, in my opinion, for the case. I don't think, even if he was to testify credibly, I think you're really, I mean, if you're opening the door to his mental health condition, is that really a good thing? I guess maybe if I'm looking at it as it's better to be suffering some sort of mental health condition that potentially is curable than to just be outright indifferent to your situation or to the
I
situation.
can through the testing portion of your.
You are still under oath. Thank you. You're very welcome. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, I want to try to get as quickly as I can through the testing portion of your report. But what I need to do is to listen to my question, pretty much yes or no, try to answer just the question I'm asking. If there's something else you can address it on, redirect. All right?
Thank you,
All right.
sir.
So, Doctor, you tested the defendant and you described symptomology, things he's experiencing at the time of the testing, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And we talked about PTSD and we talked about the fact you agree with me that's a result of the shooting, not the cause of the shooting, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so, doctor, you make a number of statements in your testing, and I'll just review a few of those. One of the things on page 35, you say that the defendant feels trapped and constantly persecuted with no means of escape. And that's one of the things that comes out of one of your tests, right? But that's at the time you tested him. Would you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so you're not saying he felt that leading up to the shooting. You're saying he feels that now. And that's not surprising given that he's in jail facing a long prison sentence. Would you agree?
I don't.
You don't agree with that? Okay. You don't expect that someone in jail for a long sentence would feel, quote, trapped and constantly persecuted with no means of escape.
That's how we felt before also.
Doctor, in your summary, you state that the defendant was, quote, on page 40, not believed by any responsible adults. Who are the responsible adults you're talking about?
His parents,
Okay, who else?
his high school, his counselor.
All right, that's important to me, doctor. Explain to me when his high school counselor, quote, did not believe him. Because, in fact, the defendant lied to the counselor and said he was not suffering this distress, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so it's not that the counselor didn't believe him, it's the defendant didn't tell him.
He told him in his drawings on his assignments.
Okay, but doctor, it's not that he didn't believe him, it's that when he asked him about the drawings, the defendant lied.
Absolutely. Yes,
All
sir.
right, okay. What other adults, what other responsible adults didn't believe the defendant? I'm not talking about people he lied to who didn't pick up on it. I'm talking about people that he expressed his need for help to and who did not believe him, other than his parents.
So those were the notable ones, his parents and his high school counselor.
You disagree with me, doctor. He didn't tell the high school counselor he wanted help. He said the opposite.
Okay.
Is that a yes, doctor?
Yes, sir.
Doctor, you described the defendant as a broken person with a broken brain. And I don't need you to describe that. I need to know what does that mean? What's the medical definition of a broken person with a broken brain?
Mental illness is a symptom of a broken brain.
Is broken brain a medical term, doctor?
It is a layman's term. I'll be more than happy to go into clinical definitions
A
of a
Broken brain.
Is there a clinical definition? Like if I look it up, am I going to
Is
find
that a
that?
clinical definition for that?
Brain dis-ease, brain dysfunction, cingulate gyrus dysfunction, limbic system dysfunction. All of those are clinical terms, and I thought we wanted to be brief, so that's why I said a broken brain.
All right, and you'd agree with me that a broken brain is not a Miller factor, right?
It's not a Miller factor.
And you agree that you're not offering a fix for the broken brain, are you?
I'm sorry, sir?
He's
You're
calling
not
it
offering a
broken
fix for the
brain
broken
to
brain.
No, sir.
Okay. And you're not telling the court even that it can be
trolling
fixed,
him
are
a
you?
little.
Yes, I am actually.
Okay. You know that this can be fixed.
Yes, sir.
Doctor,
No,
you
this
finished
can be
that sentence
fixed.
on
There
page
we go.
40, describing the
Irrelevant.
defendant as a person waiting for something terrible. That's in the third to last sentence in the last full paragraph on page 40.
Yeah, so the defense is blaming everyone else and not taking agency.
Third to last sentence.
In the last full paragraph. So it's the paragraph under summary of defendant's mental illness.
The state
And
is
you say
going to do
broken
the
person with
same
a broken
against
brain
parents.
waiting for something terrible to happen. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Doctor, he wasn't waiting, was he?
He was.
He was planning. Wasn't he planning something terrible?
He was.
And he planned it out and he wrote about it and he recorded himself talking about it. And he actually anticipated people finding his recordings, right?
Yes, sir.
That's
And then he
weird.
carried out something terrible, right?
Yes, sir.
You make another remarkable statement on the last line in the last full paragraph of page 40. Quote, the defendant's form of mental illness, if not treated, typically ends with deadly consequences. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
You don't cite anything to support that in your report, do you?
It's not cited in my report, sir. That is correct.
Okay, what do you base that on? The idea that the defendant's form of mental illness, as you describe it, typically ends with deadly consequences.
Yes, sir.
Can you cite the court what you rely on for that prospect?
Every day in this country, I'm citing it. I'm giving you the evidence, sir. 22 veterans killed themselves.
Doctor, that's not the question. You use the word typically, and you use the mental illness describing this defendant. And what I'm asking is, where do you get that it typically ends in deadly consequences?
Untreated mental illness, sir, without intervention, does not end very well.
But you say it typically ends with deadly consequences.
Yes, sir.
You got anything you can cite that says that?
22 veterans every day in this country.
The disorders that you list, that
He's
you
so
diagnosed the defendant with, those aren't
questioning this
specifically
guy.
associated with youth, are they?
Can you rephrase that question, please, sir?
The disorders that you diagnosed the defendant with on page 41, those are not specifically associated with youth, are they?
That's not true.
Okay, tell me.
Depression?
You're saying he's associated with youth. Adults don't have depression?
Yes, sir.
Hopefully we'll see you
That's
shortly,
what my
yours.
I understand, doctor. What I'm saying is specifically associated with youth. That this is a problem that youth face that adults do not. And you would agree with me that adults suffer from major depressive disorder or even severe with psychotic features, as you describe it, generalized anxiety disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder, right?
Yes, sir.
Those are not exclusive to youth.
Oh, correct.
Lots of adults have those same diagnoses.
Absolutely.
And lots of those people with those disorders don't kill anyone, do they?
That is correct.
Lots of people suffer depression. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Even severe depression.
Yes, sir.
And those people don't all become mass shooters, do they?
That is true.
Doctor, you spend quite a bit of time talking about implicit bias. And I want to start our discussion about that and say, you and I agree that implicit bias exists. And it's been widely studied and well documented. And I know you teach seminars on it. And I agree with you that it's an important issue. What I don't understand is how implicit bias has anything to do with this case. So that's what I want to focus on, okay? What was the genesis of this idea of yours to view this shooter and the shooting through the lens of race?
That's a good question.
So what I do,
I didn't get that whole line of.
classes, sir,
So doctor, I want to stop you. My specific question is, what was the genesis of this idea that you have to view this shooter and this shooting through the lens of race?
I was about to explain it to you, sir.
Let me ask you this. Was that your idea or someone else's?
It's actually based on my profession, on my professional experience, sir.
All right, so this was your idea.
It's not solely my idea, sir.
No, what I mean is, when you decided to put that in your report, no one said to you, hey, doctor, how about implicit bias? You came to them and said, you know what, I can explain this, it's implicit bias. True? It's your idea.
No, sir.
Who involved in this case said to you, how about implicit bias?
I got my information by looking at the data and by disaggregating the data, sir.
I'm not talking about the data that you rely on. I'm talking about the idea. Have you ever seen another mitigation report that blames a defendant's conduct on implicit bias?
I have not.
Okay. And what I'm saying is, so you have this idea, right?
Okay.
And where did that come from?
From my professional training and my research and teaching on implicit bias.
So, doctor, on page 44, you refer to implicit bias as, quote, perhaps the most telling variable that contributed to the tragic events that can be traced. Pardon me. The most telling variable that contributed to the tragic events can be traced to implicit bias. You see that?
I don't see, but I do agree.
It's the first sentence on page 44 under implicit bias and failure to act.
Just one moment, sir. Okay.
What do you mean by the most telling variable? You know what, let's make this faster. What are the other variables that are not as telling?
Explicit bias did not seem to be a factor. That is one variable that did not seem to be.
Hold on, doctor. I'm talking about variables in this case. You're talking about the most telling variable in this case. You say that contributed to the tragic events. You're talking about the shooting in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
I want to know the variables you're talking about in this case for which implicit bias is the most telling. What are the other variables related to this case?
I don't have fathers.
It's the only variable?
That's what I looked at, sir.
All right. So you don't look at parental neglect or his home life as one of the most telling variables?
They're all contributing factors.
Or the untreated mental illness, or you claim untreated mental illness that according to you typically ends with the defendant killing someone? That's not the most telling variable to you?
They're all contributing factors.
All right. You say multiple times in your report that the defendant needed and was asking for help and he didn't get it, right?
Yeah, I will clarify that, John Gary. Well, actually, no, I agree with you. That was his testimony, is that if he had been a non-white kid, if his troubles would have been identified, because he cited all kinds of things with Black students that suffer whatever, and they're identified and suspended and kicked out of school, whereas the white kids aren't. And so if he had been a Black kid, he would have been kicked out of school and not left to remain, essentially, is what he was saying. At least that's what I gathered. It was really weird.
That's according to you.
Yes, sir.
And the people you say that he didn't get it from his parents, and then you told me the school, right?
Yes, sir.
Does implicit bias have anything to do with his parents' failure to get him help?
I'm sorry?
Does implicit bias have anything to do with his parents' failure to get him help?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you're just talking about the school.
Yes, sir.
All right. And doctor, when you're talking about the school, one of the things you rely on are the homework papers where the defendant drew guns and notes all over them, right? Correct?
That's one reason. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And you pasted those assignments into your report, right?
Yes, sir.
And you referenced those in several places in your report. And I want to go over 3 of those with you very briefly. On page 2 of your report, you say the defendant had been turning in assignments Doctor, let's skip to page 3. Under your sources of information, you list assignments turned into the Oxford High School leading up to the events. Do you see that? It's the 4th bullet point up.
Yes, I do.
All right. You say on page 2, leading up to the offense, the defendant had been turning in school. This is the bottom paragraph on that page. About a little more than halfway through, it says, the defendant had been turning in school assignments with weapons drawn on them and sad faces and saying things like, the world is a joke, school is a joke, I'm a joke, or falling for a fool's joke. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you attach that specific assignment, and it's at page 63 of your report. You want to take my word for it? You can look at
I
page.
take your word for it.
All right, page 63 says, the world is a joke, school is a joke, I'm a joke. That's what you're referring to, right?
As one of the assignments. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then on page 48, you say, despite turning in assignments with weapons drawn on every assignment, he was not suspended nor expelled from school because implicit bias says he did not fit the profile of a troubled student. You see that on page 48?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
And then you
defense
attach all
in this
those
bill.
assignments that you're relying on, right?
Yes, sir.
And your point is no one paid attention to those drawings because the defendant is white, right?
My
That's
point
implicit
is,
bias, right?
It's not subject to the same level of rigor.
And you're relying on the homework assignments because you say if someone else had turned those in, they would have paid attention. But because the defendant is white, they overlooked that. That's your
Yes,
opinion.
basically
Okay.
did. Yes, sir.
Doctor, when and where were those homework papers found? Do you know?
I believe they were found in his backpack.
Okay.
And,
Okay, that's what I needed to know. After the shooting, right?
that is correct.
All right. And you notice there are no grades or anyone else's handwriting on any of those, are there?
That is correct.
And doctor, those assignments, do you have any evidence that anyone other than the defendant saw those until after the shooting?
I do not.
Okay. And so when you repeatedly say in your report that those assignments were turned in, you assumed that, right?
That's correct.
And you accused the teachers at Oxford High School of being racist. It's implicit bias, not overt, but it's racism, right?
No, sir.
You're saying that implicit bias is not a form of racism.
Implicit bias is not racism, sir.
Okay.
They're two very different terms.
Okay. And so what you're saying
We gotta
is
clip that,
because
share
the
it.
student was white and not black, not racism, but implicit bias, they didn't pay attention to those assignments, right? That's what you put in your report.
Everyone in this courtroom has some form of implicit bias, or has nothing to do with race.
I'm not debating that with you, doctor. What I'm saying is you're accusing those teachers of not paying attention to those homework papers because the defendant was white. That's your testimony.
That is correct.
Right. And doctor, none of those folks saw those homework papers. So you accused teachers at Oxford High School of not paying attention. to the
Neither
defendant
did the
because of
parents,
his race
sir.
when they never saw those things. Does that matter to you?
Sir, he turned in.
Does it matter to you, doctor?
It does matter.
Okay. Do you want to amend your statement now
I
about
do.
Oxford High School based on the homework papers?
I do
Now that
not.
you know they didn't see them, you're going to stick with that.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, to be clear, you're stating that implicit bias is relevant to this case, right? Which is about a white student at a mostly white school who killed 4 other white students, shot a white teacher, shot 6 other white students. You're saying that implicit bias plays a role in this case, right?
I do not understand your question, sir.
You understand the things I just said. Who was involved in this case? A white student, 4 white students who were killed, a white teacher, 6 other white students who were shot. You agree that those are the actors in this case who were involved in the charges here.
Those are the actors.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying implicit bias has a role in this case.
In regards to the teacher's response.
Okay. And
He is a hostile witness, by the way. So this is cross-examination by the state. This is a defense witness, and he's being cross-examined. So he is a hostile witness. That's the definition of a hostile witness. Someone who's opposed to your fundamental position. So he's already a hostile witness. Yeah. And Valhalla. Can we just take a second to recognize that a black doctor is sitting on the stand testifying that a school shooter did it and was allowed to do it because he is white? That's what we're having right now. And I agree. Flux, this doctor is an ass.
what Miller factor does implicit bias relate to?
There is no middle factor, sir.
Okay, and you would agree with me the Miller factors are things that mitigate a defendant's responsibility, right? Things like if you
Yeah,
had fewer chances in life or a tough
King is
upbringing,
his name.
those are
Can't
mitigating,
remember
right?
his first name.
That is correct.
Is growing up white in a mostly white school district a disability the defendant had to overcome?
Can you rephrase the question, sir?
Is growing up white in a mostly white school district a disability this defendant had to overcome?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did race make his circumstances more difficult?
I don't think so.
Was he discriminated against?
There's no evidence to show that.
So, doctor, would you?
I'm going to correct my earlier statement. I first said that this doctor taking an egg and dropping it into a bowl, signifying the damage to a brain if somebody falls, was the most ridiculous part of his testimony. Now I'm going to have to change my opinion that somehow race played a role in this, even though no black people were killed, the student was white, and all of this is nonsense.
agree with me that chroming up white is not a mitigating factor in this case?
That is true.
Doctor, you testified that you reviewed the bird video and the manifesto video and the school surveillance video before you submitted your first report, correct?
I think so.
All right. And doctor, I'll tell you, and you can tell me if you disagree, but you don't mention those other than putting them in your sources in your first report. You don't mention them at all, again, in the rest of your first report. Would you agree with that?
That sounds about correct.
All right. In your June report on page 49, you spend about 2 pages describing what happened leading up to and on the day of the shooting, correct? If you want to look at page 49.
I take your word for it, sir.
All right. Your report's a total of 69 pages long, right?
That is correct.
And you spend 5 sentences on the journal. You disagree with that?
I take your word for it, sir.
2 sentences on the bird video.
I take your word for it.
4 sentences on what you refer to as the manifesto video, right?
I take your word for it.
And then you spend about a page that you label, quote, the day of the shooting. You want to look at that, or will you agree with me?
I take your word for it,
All
sir.
But doctor, you really don't even spend a page describing the defendant's actions on the day of the shooting, do you? You never mention the defendant getting up early to get the gun and ammunition, do you?
It's not mentioned in my report.
You don't mention him packing it into his backpack
It's not mentioned in my report.
or getting himself to school
It's not mentioned in my report.
or getting into the school with the gun and the clips and the ammunition
It's not mentioned in my report.
or going into the bathroom
It's not mentioned in my report.
or putting toilet paper in his ears.
It's not mentioned in my report.
Did you ask him about that, doctor? Why he put toilet paper in his ears?
I did not.
And you don't mention the defendant shooting Phoebe, right?
I did not.
Or shooting Hannah, right?
I did not.
Or shooting, Hannah or Madison. You don't mention that.
I did not.
Or Tate
I did not.
or
mention
Justin, right?
any. I did not.
Or Aiden or Molly Darnell or John or Riley or Elijah or Kylie. You don't mention any of that, do you?
I didn't think it was appropriate, sir.
Okay. That information was included, so you knew
Good
about it. You just didn't include it, right?
I did not mention any names in my report, sir.
Doctor, it's not just that you didn't mention any names. You don't talk about the defendant killing anyone, do you?
Yes, the defendant's manifest video has been released. At least the audio portion we heard on day 1 of the this hearing. If you want to go back and listen to it, I can't remember if it's morning or afternoon. And then we started replaying part of it again this morning's stream, just killing time a little bit. But yep, it is there. You can check out my earlier streams to listen to it if you want. It's kind of disturbing.
I do. It's on page 1, the first paragraph.
You know, Doctor, it's interesting you bring that up because you didn't say that. You changed your report to say allegedly the defendant did it. There is nothing in your report that suggests this defendant is responsible for the deaths of those kids. We'll get there.
He was
But you
already
agree
asked
that was
about that.
included in
on
the
cross.
materials you reviewed. You knew that information.
I do.
Doctor, you never talk about how many victims there were, do you?
I did not.
Isn't that relevant?
It is relevant.
Okay, but you don't talk about how many people he shot, how many people he killed, and how many he terrorized. You don't talk about that.
That is correct.
Doctor, you don't indicate how long the defendant spent walking through the school shooting people, do you?
I did not.
Do you know how long that was? Do
I do not, sir.
you think that matters?
Perhaps it does.
And you don't indicate the defendant's demeanor during the shooting, do you?
I did not.
Yes,
You saw the video, right?
we already addressed that, Jung. We still think it's a BS argument. But yes, we already recognize that.
I did.
Does not
I
include
still don't
audio,
see how
does
it plays any relevance.
I'm sorry.
That video does not include audio, does it?
Which video, sir?
Of the shooting.
I do not understand. The question does not include audio.
Correct. When you see the video of the shooting, there's no audio to that, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did you ask anyone what it sounded like inside the school during the shooting?
I did not.
Did you listen to the body cam audio and video of a staff member trying to save Hannah?
I did not listen to any audio, sir.
Okay. Does any of that matter to you?
It does matter.
Okay. In your report, you don't even include one sentence about how this defendant killed the victims to you.
It's not included in my report, sir.
All right. How far away was the defendant when he shot each of the victims who died?
Sir, I watched the videos and he was pretty close to them.
Pretty close. What do you mean by that? Point blank range?
Yeah, I don't know the exact measurement, so I can't testify to
It's
that.
essentially the gun to the head in most cases. You agree with that?
Those are the facts of the case.
Do you know where on the body he shot the various victims?
I do not.
In the head, the neck, the chest? You're not aware.
I believe one victim was shot in the head, at least one.
Doctor, are you aware of when and how the defendant shot Justin Schilling?
I am not aware, sir.
Okay. He's in a bathroom. Do you know how long he was in the bathroom with Justin Keegan before he shot Justin?
No, sir.
you know how he asked Justin to get down on the ground and then he executed him? Are you aware of that?
I take your word for it, sir.
Okay. Does that matter to you?
It does matter.
Doesn't it speak to the defendant and his state of mind at the time?
It does.
You think that's the product of a juvenile brain?
I do.
Okay. Did you ask the defendant about that?
I certainly asked him about the shootings.
Did you ask him about his motivation or what he was thinking when he did it?
I did, sir.
But you don't include that in your report, do you?
I did not.
Doctor, would you agree that being calm and methodical when you kill people is not a reflection of youth and impulsivity, is it?
Is your question, sir?
No, but I can repeat it.
Okay.
Being calm and methodical when you kill people is not a reflection of youth and impulsivity, is it?
I think it's a reflection of what happened.
Okay, but it's not youth. Adults do that, right?
Absolutely.
All right, doctor, I want to move to page 67 of your report. When the defendant was sitting in the office with the backpack next to him, you say, the defendant started to feel a sense of relief knowing that the sheriffs would descend on the school. You wrote that, right?
Yes, I did. Yes, sir.
And you characterized the defendant, we've talked about this, as someone who kept asking for help but never got it, right?
That is correct.
You cite times when he said to his friend B, I keep telling my parents I need help and they won't help me, right?
That is correct.
Doctor, that exact moment you're citing, when the defendant has the backpack next to him in the counselor's office, the defendant had the perfect opportunity to get help, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Yes,
All right,
he
and he
did.
didn't take that, right? He didn't take that opportunity.
Those are the facts of the case.
Right. He'd ask for help many times, but when help is right there in front of him, he doesn't ask for help, does he?
That is correct.
And you'd agree if he just said, Mom and Dad, I need help, or I feel like there's no hope. I even brought a gun to school. They'd give him help, wouldn't they?
I've never met his parents. I don't know how they would have reacted.
Well, the school, you don't have any reason to believe if he had said that he would not have gotten help, do you?
I don't know, sir. I don't know the answer to that question.
And it's not that no one believed him, right? He just didn't say it. You agree with me?
I do not agree with that, sir.
He never said it, did he? He never said it in the counselor's office. Did he tell you that he said, I really need help, Mr. Hopkins? I really need help, Mom and Dad? Did he tell you he said that?
He wrote on his paper.
Doctor,
I need help.
we've talked about that. He then tells them that the paper was part of a video game. He says, I'm not asking for help. That's what he says to them, right?
For the sake of brevity, sir, I will say yes.
Yeah, okay. So at that moment, doctor, the defendant, for whatever reason, decided he wasn't going to ask for help, right? But you agree with me. At that moment, the counselor told his parents, you have to get him help within 48 hours, right? You agree with that?
I read that.
So at most, if the defendant's just not comfortable talking about it there, he's 48 hours away at most from the help that he's allegedly been begging for, right?
So he should have gotten the help right away.
Okay, doctor, but I'm talking about the defendant now, not the other folks in the room. The defendant now knows, after he's been asking for help for a long time. You cite April of 21, right?
Yes, sir.
He's less than 2 days away now, right?
He was 15
You
when he
agree?
committed the
I agree
act.
with you.
All right. And he doesn't choose to just say nothing and go home. He leaves that meeting and he goes to the bathroom and he takes the gun and he starts shooting, right?
Actually, no, sir. He went back to classes.
Okay. He went back to class and instead of finishing out his classes for the day and going home and then getting help, he decided to start shooting.
No, sir. He went to the lunchroom and had his lunch.
And then he started shooting. He had time to think about it.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Speaking of that, that brings up kind of an interesting point. If he hadn't have been called down to have the meeting with the counselors and the parents and the teachers, they were talking about counseling and that he's a danger to himself and things like that. Would he have shot that day? How many times did he bring it to school? Was it only that day? These are kind of questions that are still up in the air that maybe this doctor should have actually asked the defendant about. Just a thought.
Did you ask the defendant about that?
I did, but he did not respond.
On page 68,
Move on. You said, did you ask the defendant about that? Could you just clarify about that, what that means?
yes. So, doctor, did you confront the defendant with the
Kind of, sort of. Like, we can only impeach this witness with this witness's, we can only use this witness's statements to impeach this witness. So if this witness is called at the parents' trial, we can use these statements to impeach the witness. And part of those statements, the testimony or the transcripts rather, could also include the prosecutorial or the prosecutor's questions. But prosecutor's not going to be a witness. So we can't impeach the prosecutor's statements from this trial during the parents' trial. But they're exactly opposite each other. So that's amazing.
The fact that help was now, it was on the precipice of help. Less than 2 days away.
It's probably like 98% white and is rural. Something like that. I'm guessing, I don't know exactly, but just knowing the area, that would probably be a fairly accurate number, Valhalla.
Why did he start shooting instead? Did you ask him that?
I did not ask him that question, sir.
So he didn't explain that to you.
That is correct.
On page 68, you describe the defendant. I got to look at the page. This is
Oh, nice. Let's just get a juvenile on camera.
Doctor, on page 68 of your report, first paragraph, conclusion events, you say the defendant now returns to
What is
class
this
with this
cameraman
feeling of
doing?
terror and absolute astonishment. Those are your words, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're talking about the defendant. You're saying the defendant is the one who's feeling terror.
Yes, sir.
And then, doctor, even more remarkably, the sentence before that, you say, perhaps the saddest part of this very horrible saga is that the defendant was given his backpack with the gun and told to return to class. You've heard the testimony, doctor. You've read the reports. You've heard people crying in the courtroom. You've seen the families. And you're saying that the saddest part of this is that he was sent back to class. That's what's sad about this case.
Those lives could have been saved.
That's true, doctor. And who made that decision?
A number of people.
All right. Finally, doctor, on the very last page, you include one sentence that talks about the defendant murdering anyone. It just sort of hints at it. And in fact, in that sentence, you don't blame the defendant, do you?
What are you referring to, sir?
I'm talking about the one sentence where you ever talk about the defendant killing anyone. The only one in your entire report.
Could you just specify where this is?
Yeah, it's the last sentence under conclusion events.
Jung, I know you're coming in late to this because I haven't seen you in chat. They never tested his brain. This doctor's testimony is purely based off of, I watched a couple of videos. He didn't meet with the defendant. He didn't test the defendant. No, there were no brain scans of the defendant. There is nothing. So this is a bad witness.
68.
One moment, please. On page 68, the last sentence.
Of the conclusion events.
Oh.
Can you read that to the court?
Says his obsessive thoughts and compulsion propelled him to take the lives of innocent people.
Doctor, is that really your opinion about how these murders happen?
Yes, sir.
When you talk about obsessive thoughts, obsessed with what? What is the defendant obsessed with
With harming people.
that propels him to do it? He's obsessed with torturing birds and killing people, right?
That's correct.
Doctor, would you agree with me? You spend very little time discussing the journal in your report.
Egg. But the egg, he dropped the egg.
I'm discussing it, sir. I don't have very little. I spend time discussing it.
All right. So you don't discuss it at all. You've already agreed with me in your first report, your January report, right?
Jung, by the way, so everyone knows Jungmin Shelley, she's always in my chat, but she is actually in this field, the mental health field. No, they did not test Ethan. He did not meet with Ethan. He didn't interview Ethan. They didn't test his brain. They didn't scan his brain. But most importantly, what he did do is he took an egg and dropped it. And that is proof that this defendant can be redeemed. This has been nonsense testimony.
That is correct.
All right. And then in your June report, you spend
It was
6
so
sentences on it, right?
I take your word for it, sir.
All right. And you pull out 2 quotes, right? One about my parents would
Yeah,
listen
he
and help
scanned
me,
his
a
own
therapist. I
brain
used to have a dream and I
and
realized
dropped
working hard for your whole won't do anything. That's the first quote you use in events leading up to the shooting from the journal, right?
I take your word for it, sir.
It's
And then he includes a
science.
second quote. We're on page 49. I have this huge crush on a girl in my 6th hour. I want to ask her out, right? Those are
That's correct.
those are the only 2 quotes you use from the journal, right?
That's correct.
All right. And you spend almost no time talking about the birds or the bird video. Again, in your initial report,
You said he
listed
met
as
with
video.
him 6 times. Did he really? Because I didn't hear that. Maybe he did. Maybe I'm wrong. But still, there was no brain scan. And he's testifying about the brain. And he dropped the egg. And then he concluded that race was a factor, which is nonsense to me.
And never mentioned birds anywhere again in your report. Would you agree?
Have he made a video of himself torturing birds,
Correct.
indicating his desire to make the birds feel
Hold on.
what he was feeling?
Oh, we're about to get there. That's 2 sentences in June, right? And in the first report, there's 0 sentences. You agree?
That is correct.
All right. And you say, as you just said, the defendant probably saw this as a way of releasing the pain he was feeling inside, right?
That is correct.
You don't explain that, right? That's it. You don't offer any further explanation of why you think he probably saw this as a way of releasing the pain he was feeling, right?
That is correct.
Did you ask the defendant about that?
I did not.
So, doctor, there are things you asked him and things you didn't. Was the defendant forthcoming with you?
Based on my testing, I believe he was.
All right. You do indicate in one of your tests he was over-reporting, right?
That is correct.
And doctor, you're aware of a discussion he had with a girl about being shot by his father with a BB gun. You're aware of that?
I saw that in one of the documentations.
Okay. And he acknowledged he lied about that, right? Sometimes he just makes stuff up.
That is true.
Did you ask him about why he killed baby birds and whether he liked it or not?
And there's a possibility of redeeming this witness. If you get him off of some of the bad stuff, you'd be like, well, you put that in your report, but that's not the focus of your report, right? And these other things are more important.
Attempted to.
Okay. And he didn't respond to that.
He's still trying to come to grips with what has happened.
And doctor, you really don't mention the manifesto video, right? You spend about 4 sentences on that, and you don't quote anything from it, do you?
So I believe I've answered that question. I did mention it in my report.
Doctor, hold on. I'm asking about a different video now. We're talking about the manifesto video, right? And you don't address that in your first report, but in your second report on page 50, you label video the night before the night of the shooting. It says video before night of shooting, but it's video the night before the shooting, right?
Okay.
And you include a couple sentences about that. It's actually not mostly about the video. You say, the night preceding the shooting, Ethan was locked out of his home by his parents following a verbal conflict surrounding his grades, right?
There's 6 sentences in that section.
Yes. And the first one is you talk about he'd been in a verbal dispute with his parents, and his parents actually locked him out of the house, right?
That is correct.
In fact, he'd been locked out of the house when he made that video, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. You spend a couple sentences on it, but then you don't actually quote from it. You say the video shows him indicating his desire to harm students at the school, right? Those are your words, correct?
That is correct.
And you would agree with me, doctor, of the 20,000 text messages, you make no reference to 99% of those. You just include the 1%.
That were relevant, yes.
And doctor, in your report, at least, you never talk about the defendant's internet searches. Agree?
That is correct.
And you were aware they existed. You testified you did pull out one about the dog, so you knew they existed. You just didn't reference them in your report.
That is correct.
In fact, you don't mention the shooting at all or the shooting video in your report, do you? You saw it, but you don't mention it, do you?
I was close. I'm going to call it
This is
close.
page 1 of my report. The shooting.
What are you talking about, doctor?
You said I have not mentioned the shooting. When I'm saying
Yes.
page 1 of my report, my report's paragraph.
Oh, where you say he allegedly shot and killed 4 of his classmates? Okay. You never talk about the defense motivation, do you? You never talk about the defense motivation, right?
I mentioned his mental illness, sir.
Doctor, my question is not his mental illness, it's his motivation. Why does he want to kill people? You didn't talk about that in your report, did you?
I did.
Where?
In my testing, sir, I spoke about his obsession and his compulsions.
Doctor, I'm talking about what motivated him. Why did he want to kill other people?
I don't even think Ethan knows fully why you wanted to do it.
Okay. I'm glad you said that, doctor, because we're going to look at some things and see if Ethan tells us,
Sure.
the shooter tells us why he was motivated to do that. All right.
I just
Doctor,
put
I'm going
the
to show you a series of clips from the journal, the text messages, internet searches, and so
I just put a link to the egg drop part in the chat.
All right, okay. First one, doctor, page 22 of the journal. And the defendant says, then I will walk behind any girl pretty and shoot them in the back of the head. I will then shoot everyone I see aiming for the head. You see that?
I do.
Next slide, please. I will continue shooting people until police breach the building. I will then surrender to them and plead guilty to life in prison. You see that?
I do.
Next slide, please. I want the world to remember me. That's in the journal, right? You saw that.
That is correct.
You don't reference that in your report, though, do you?
That is correct.
Next slide, please. Killing myself is too much of a pussy move. People will just forget about me, and I will have never making an impact in this world. The only way is to shoot up the school. You see that?
I do.
And you were aware of that. You read that, right?
I do.
Next slide. I'm going to kill many, many people for no sole reason. I'm going to rain fucking fire down on this school. I will cause the biggest school shooting in Michigan history. I will kill everyone I fucking see. You see that?
I do.
That tells us something about his motivation, right?
It does.
And in fact, he's right about Michigan history, isn't he? Isn't he?
I want to answer, sir. So far, yes.
Next slide, please. I want to remember throughout all of history. Right?
I see that.
Okay. You saw that before. I'm not showing you the first time, right? You've seen the journal.
That is correct.
Next slide, please. I would just hope their parents will fill with sadness. And is it distraught? When I shoot up the school, I hope that every parent of kids I gravely murder will be so sad that they kill themselves. You see that?
Those are the facts of the case.
Hold on, doctor. It's not just the facts of the case. This is the defendant's own words, right? Okay. When they show the video in court, everyone can see their children and friends dying. And I want for the parents to see their kids burn to ash and bawl their eyes out. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. You see that?
I do.
Next slide, please. Defendant's journal, page 18. The first victim has to be a pretty girl with a future. You see that?
I do.
And it shows a gun to the back of the head of a girl, right?
I do.
Next slide, please. I know that rarely any shootings have happened in Michigan, so that means I will cause the biggest school shooting ever in the state. I am not going to tell myself I will surrender to the police. I wish to hear the screams of the children as I shoot them. You see that?
I do.
Next slide. So, doctor, on this slide, he's talking about what kind of weapon he has. You're aware at one point he has access to a .22 pistol, right?
I do.
And he says, I want to do the shooting with a 9mm pistol because they are effective from killing, but all I got is a puny .22, right? You see that?
Yes, sir.
And then he draws a drawing of two different bullets. One's a .22 and one's a 9mm. And you're aware, doctor, one is a lot more deadly than the other, right?
I take your word for it, sir.
You're not aware of that? He was right about that, right?
Yes, sir.
Next slide, please. It just amuses me how I can cause people to talk about what I did, and it just makes me happy. Now he's talking about taking the bird head to school. You're aware of that incident, right?
Yes, sir.
And he says, now people are talking about me. That makes me happy, right?
Yes, sir.
So there's a presumption in Michigan that we're not going to send juveniles away for life without the possibility of parole. The state has the burden of proof to convince the court by clear and convincing evidence that this child is irredeemable at every level and that he should be sent away without the possibility of parole. So whether or not this child has parole options down the road is the only purpose of this hearing. He's already pled guilty, and he hasn't been sentenced yet. This is just whether or not he's going to get parole once he is sentenced to life in prison, multiple counts of life in prison.
I killed 8 infant baby birds by slowly torturing them until death, right?
Yes, sir.
These are the defendant's words after torturing the baby birds and before killing his classmates, right?
Yes, sir.
I murdered an entire family of 5 newborn baby birds. I drowned them and burned them alive while they all screamed. I cut one in half and stuck the head of its brother in its stomach. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Again, these are the defendant's own thoughts and words ahead of the shooting, right? Next slide, please. If I kill myself, then people will not care about me and I will be forgotten within half a lifetime. That's why I'm going to cause the biggest school shooting of this decade and the only one in Michigan, right?
Yes, sir.
I also want to react on how the world reacts to my shooting. I'm probably going to live the rest of my life in prison. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Next slide. He says again, I'm about to spend the rest of my life in prison, right?
Yes, sir.
Shortly before the shooting, I'm going to prison for life, and many people have about 1 day left to live, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I want to go through some text messages, the defendant talking about violence against people He's talking about drowning children. He says, just looking them in their eyes as they look back at you while they know that their entire life is about to end so young, the best feeling. But stick your fingers into their eye sockets and push down so they scream in pain and drown their lungs with water. Just thinking about the torturing and the screaming and the way their legs flail in the air as they cry, it fills the void. You read that, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
And again, you read that before your reports, but you decided that wasn't relevant to your report, correct? Correct?
They're all relevant to my report, sir.
But you didn't include it.
That is correct.
Next slide. Whenever I see a little kid about a year old or a little more, I want to pick them up and run off with them, then torture them before throwing them off a cliff. And then I will kill any innocent. I don't care who I kill. I will kill who I feel like killing. Age, gender, I don't care, right? I don't care about innocent. Killing the innocent is the same as killing the bad. It both satisfies. You're aware of those texts.
Yes, sir.
Next slide. I want to take the axe and chip a bird in half, presumably chop a bird in half, shoot it, torture it, dissect it. I want to chop it in half with an axe. Talking about fish, then I want to kill it while it is live so that it can feel the pain. Next slide, please. More about the birds. Also, there's a baby bird nest right next to my house with 5 baby birds in it. I can also reach them. Tomorrow I'm making my move. I will get video and pics. I can't wait till tomorrow. There is 5 and they're going to die anyways. I want to take something heavy and break its beak. I can't wait, dude. I'm so fucked up. I'm going to break its beak, then chop its head off. I'm going to take so many vids and pics. You've seen all these, right, Doctor?
Yes, sir.
I want to hear it scream. The first bird, though, I want to torture it. And it's so young, too, like it's just born and it's already going to be killed. It's like 2 days old. I'm going to snap the beak off and then chop its head off, then take out its heart, then chop it in pieces, and also take out the brain, then smash it to little bits. I'm so fucked up, I like it. Jeffrey Dahmer got the good idea. Only thing he did wrong was get caught.
Feel so dumb for going out of your way to
I want
watch
to
the
kill another bird so
explanation.
badly.
Yeah, it was
or
really
baby
bad,
bird. I can
wasn't
reach
it?
into the nest. They're not safe. During third hour, all I thought about was ways to torture the bird. I'm going to film this like a documentary. My dad is pulling out of the driveway. Now I'm going to wait a couple minutes, though, just in case he comes back. Right? So he's talking about.
This is a juvenile friend of his who has not been identified and lives out of state. So I don't know who this person is, but he's sending it to a friend.
His joy in killing birds, but also then what he wants to do to the birds. But Doctor, he doesn't just talk about it. Then he goes and does it, right? And
They're trying to show that he's like pure evil, that he doesn't have a mental health condition. And he's just evil and therefore irredeemable. Like if you're normal in the mind, you don't have a mental health defect or anything wrong with your brain, and you have these thoughts, then you're not getting over them. You're going to have them forever and ever. And no matter what sort of therapy or classes, you're just going to have these thoughts and you should never get parole. That's what the state is trying to say.
videotapes it. And then he texts his friend about that, right? And he says, I just finished. The vid is too long, so I can't.
You have to ask a question.
I'm sorry. So you agree with me that after he made those statements about his plans, he then did go and do it, right?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree with me that he then wrote about that after he done it, right?
Yes, sir.
And he wrote to B, right?
Those are the facts of the case.
All right. And what he said to B is, I just finished. The vid is too long, so I can't send, but I can send pics right before I throw it out. Sends a picture.
You might start with analysts. By the way, if you guys are watching and you continue to watch, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, share with your friends, maybe share on some social media. We're going to be covering the Crumbly case all the way through. It's the reason I
All right,
started.
so we're
on
reading
YouTube.
the text on the screen. It's so fucking, I can't wait to show you the vid. It's so fucking disturbing. And as I don't even remember saying half the stuff, like I talked to the bird like a little child while torturing. I can't wait to show you. It was so fucking fun. Thing is, the vid halfway through, so you can't see the good stuff. I put a drill in its stomach and skull. I also shot the gun at it a couple times in the stomach and its head. I also chopped it in half with an axe. I also smashed its head in with a hammer at the end, and its eyes bulge out just like Glenn's. Do you know who Glenn is?
I do not.
You know, it's a reference to The Walking Dead.
I'm not a movie fan, sir. I apologize.
Did you ask the defendant about that?
No, sir.
Like the eyelids came apart so that I could see the bird's eye. There are still 3 birds left. I was originally going to try to stick a toothpick up its ass, but I couldn't find any. God, I can't wait to show you the vid. It's 8 minutes long. Like I couldn't stop laughing my ass off when I rewatched the vid. Again, you're familiar with all of that.
Yes, sir.
All right, and now next slide, please. This is what I meant the other. So this is a text from the defendant to B. This is what I meant the other day of how I need a recharge to kill again. Now tomorrow I really want a bird, but I want it to be alive when I chop its head off. Right? God, I want to kill. I hit a bird yesterday 2 times, but it flew away. And continuing with the birds, there have been no baby birds to torture in for a long time, and I'm getting that feeling where I need to kill again. I like killing the big birds, but I like killing the baby birds more. Mostly because they're so young and they had a whole life ahead of them, but then I took it away. That's what I like. And also they're helpless and they scream when you hurt them. Doc, you see a theme there with the the students he wants to kill and the birds?
I do.
That he takes joy in killing younger people, younger birds. He talks about killing children, right?
He does.
So he talks about killing, and then he talks about better killing. Would you agree? What makes him feel better?
I do agree.
Doctor, we don't need to spend much time on these, but you understand that in addition to his internet searches about a dog, he also repeatedly searched about prison sentences in Michigan. What's the worst prison sentence you can get? What is a life sentence? What is a sentence for a 15-year-old legal age to be sent to prison, youth correctional facility? What prisons are there in Michigan? The Oxford High School layout. And then this one's important. What is the average response time for a shooting? You're aware of all of those.
Yes, sir.
And then, Doctor, there's a little bit more. You reviewed the manifesto video, right?
I did.
And in the manifesto video, you heard the defendant say in his own voice, when the bell rings to end fifth hour tomorrow, October 30th, November 30th, 2021, I'm going to walk to the dividend between the boys and the girls' bathroom, and I will have my black jacket on, and I will walk behind someone, and I will shoot a bullet in their skull. Yeah, that's my first victim. I'm going to open fire on everyone in the hallway. The hallways are too jam-packed. I will try to hit as many people as I can. I will reload, and I will find people hiding. You heard him say that. You listened to that video, right?
I did.
And then you heard him say, I understand that I'm going to prison for this. Michigan doesn't have a death penalty. I don't want to die. As funny as it may seem, I want to kill a lot of people. I do not want to die. I realize how valuable life is. This is the defendant, 12 hours before he starts killing people, right? And he's expressing what he intends to do and then what he does do, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And then you hear him say, just the thought of, there's so many people who think they're going to live the life, going to go to college, have a great career, get a family, grow old, die happily. And what they don't know that in less than a day, they're going to die and their lives are going to be changed forever, right?
Yes, sir.
And he's right about that, right?
That is cynical.
I understand my consequences. I understand that people put me in prison for this, right?
Yes, sir.
And then that first video ends, and then he records a second one saying, fuck that previous video I took. That was bullshit what I said. I'm going to have so much fun tomorrow. I have a goal, and it's to kill everyone, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, doctor, you may say this is like grandiose juvenile stuff, right?
No, sir. That is very serious stuff.
All right. So when we look at the defendant's messages,
It hasn't gone way left from the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to determine right here. So the court concluded that youths have diminished capacity and greater prospects for reform. The Miller requires courts to consider, I'm just going to pull it up this way, courts to consider without the possibility of parole for juvenile. It's scrolling along the bottom. I was going to try to pull it up. But this is relevant to that. And I'm also going to still say that I always believe that juveniles, no matter what has been going on, no matter what statements they make, or no matter how everything goes, I would like them to have the possibility of parole, because it's, we don't want to open the floodgates to without the possibility of parole for juveniles in general. And just because there's the possibility of it doesn't mean he's actually going to get out. So let's just keep the door open so that other juveniles that might not have such a heinous crime could have that possibility in the future. That's my biggest position here.
doctor, he tells us a lot about why he's doing what he's doing. That's why I asked you about his motivation. You talked about the testing, but he tells us, right, that what he wanted was to be famous, right?
That is correct.
That was his his only motivation. He liked killing, but he really wanted to be famous, right?
That is correct.
So he wasn't a fighter,
that's
a
what we're
robbery,
going to,
no one was
yes.
defending themselves, right?
They used them preliminarily at the preliminary hearing, so they are definitely going to be using them at trial. Yep, and that's the only reason I'm really watching this, is because I want to see a preview of the parents' trial.
That is correct.
And he didn't want anything from the victims. There's nothing they could have done where he said, like, if you give me this, I'll spare your life. He didn't want anything from them, right?
That is correct.
All right. And none of them had done anything to him, right? He hadn't been bullied. He didn't even know these specific people he killed, right?
That is correct.
And he wasn't seeking revenge. It's not like someone had done him wrong and he said, you know what, I'm going to get him back for that.
That is correct.
And you'd agree that can be kind of a juvenile thing, right? You feel that you've been dismissed or mistreated and you want to lash out at that person, right?
That does happen sometimes.
And you agree this shooting is not that, right?
I do agree.
So his goal and the reason for the victims, he just wants to maximize the number of people he killed so that he can commit the biggest mass shooting so that he can be remembered, right?
That is correct.
We also learn about what kind of victim he's looking for, and we just talked about this. He wants younger victims, and he actually talks about probably not killing teachers, right?
That is correct.
All right. Doctor, this thing about the defendant specifically choosing not to kill himself, have you ever seen that before?
Ethan is the only mass shooter that I've interviewed, sir. So I can't. That's it. That's my only answer I can give you.
All right. Have you? Okay, so you don't have experience with other mass shooters. You can't speak to that.
That is correct.
So it's important, doctor, at least to me, when he expresses what he's going to do, for instance, shooting people in the head, and that's what he carries through and does, right?
That is correct.
Doctor, you have this comment about the bird video, and you say that the defendant probably saw this as a way of releasing the pain he was feeling inside. Just so we're clear, you saw this live. That's not what he said, right?
That's not what he said.
That's your impression.
That is correct.
Doctor, when you watch the bird being tortured, do you get any sense that that's difficult for the defendant, that made him uncomfortable? Did he have any qualms about it?
He de-associated from what was happening.
Okay, so the person who was torturing the birds didn't have any qualms, you're saying, but that's him dissociating from what?
From reality.
So you're saying he did that during the torture, but not when he's texting his friend and talking about it, right? Not when he's rewatching the video.
That is correct.
All right. Doctor, you reviewed Dr. Aniker's report, and when he's talking about the birds, he says, "It just made a good feeling, and I don't know how to describe it. I made a little area in my parents' shed, and I would form different torture techniques on it, cutting it or breaking its limbs, or drowning it or burning it. 7 baby birds in total from 2 different nests. And I would take the BB gun and shoot them or hit them with a baseball bat." He indicated he worked on the birds over the course of a few months. He was asked what his thoughts or feelings arose when he tortured the birds. He stated, "It's like a feeling between good and pleasurable, a relief feeling in power. I don't know, it just felt good." Doc, you talked about this tension removal, tension release, right? After the defendant kills a bird or a person, he feels relieved somehow.
That is correct.
When you comment on the manifesto video, you say the video shows the defendant's inability to contain his thoughts any longer. But again, this is your interpretation, right?
It's not.
Well, let me jump ahead, doctor, because the next day in the counselor's office, he was perfectly capable of containing his thoughts, right? He didn't have to say those things there. He chose not to say them, right?
That is correct.
Doctor, there are a couple of other areas you didn't address. I just want to make sure that you agree with me. They're not part of this case. This defendant did not have a learning disability, right?
That is correct.
And you agree that this defendant has very good adaptive skills, right? He has no trouble getting out of bed in the morning or getting his things together or getting to school, right? Carrying out a plan.
That is correct.
All right. And you would agree in this case the defendant didn't act on impulse. This was not an impulsive crime.
That is correct.
All right, doctor, I want to move on now. You mentioned in your direct testimony that some of the language in your report came from another report, right?
That is correct.
You said your understanding was you had permission to use it, right? Who told you had permission to use it?
The attorney that retained me.
And who is that attorney?
I don't think it's appropriate for me to mention his name. And
Doctor,
national.
I talked to.
Answer the question, sir.
The attorney's name is Sheldon.
Sorry,
I think it's Sheldon.
can you spell that for me, doctor?
I think it's SHELLMAN. His spelling could be off.
That was weird.
Doctor,
When-
what case was that in?
It was one of my first cases.
In 2019, you said? Do
Yes,
you have your CV in front of you, doctor?
I do.
You can just take a quick look. You list the 20 cases you've involved in, and I want to make sure I know which case you're talking about.
I was hoping this was going to be finished up here today.
I'm looking at it right now.
I'm going to have to cut this
You
short.
can just see from that list of cases, I think there may be in date order that you might be able to tell us.
I think it's the People versus Lewis. I think it's the People versus Lewis.
And you're saying that that attorney said, here's a report from another expert, and it's okay for you to use parts of that report.
Yes,
What report was that? Who was the expert?
I believe it's Dr. Holden. I'm not sure, but I believe it's Dr. Holden.
There is a press conference on the serial killer. I'm going to redirect you guys over to the expert stream when I'm done with this for that press conference, because I have to.
Yes, have you shown this?
I have
Just
to
him
go
to
at
the
3
press
o'clock.
Doctor, I'm showing you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 65. Would you take a look at that, please? That's a report authored by Dr.
We're
Carol
still
E.
30
Holden,
minutes behind in their
stated April 4th of 2018, and it relates
Still
to
going.
People versus Gary Peters, which is a case in Macomb County Circuit Court. We'll take a look at that, Doctor, briefly. Just page through that. Let me know if you recognize that.
Yeah, I'll finish tonight. I am going to finish tonight. So we have, it looks like we have 40 minutes to go. And now they're painting on the floor. So maybe it's done. I'm going to hold this spot. And I got to go. My afternoon is booked. But I'm going to redirect you guys. Yeah, no, I'll finish it later. So look for a part 3, day 3, part 3 to be posted in a little bit. I'm going to redirect you guys over to the expert for the Rex press conference. I have no idea where he is in that process, but I just set up the redirect. And then we'll come back to this. We'll finish this up later because I do want to listen to all of this. And then if you guys have any further questions, let me know. Shelly, maybe you'll be involved more. And go check out. Jeez, it's just ending. Hey, how you doing?
Well, yeah, I told you I was going to the gym, and I told you I'd come back as soon as I did. So I just walked in the door, and I thought I'd join you. I just came back.
No,
Let's
I
lift it.
appreciate that. Yeah, no, I was just saying I was going to redirect everyone over to the
Okay,
press
well,
conference 'cause I had to.
For the 30-second drive-by, hi, I've been on so long. How are you guys?
I'm gonna try to do this like 8 p.m. Eastern. Finish this up. We have like another hour left if you're available. I don't know if you guys are
Okay.
doing tonight.
Okay.
Have you been listening the whole time? Have you watched?
No,
any of
I've
it?
been listening to music at the gym.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know if you watched any of the hearing.
No, I have not.
This
Is
guy
this
dropped.
the Crumbly hearing?
This is the Crumbly hearing. Yeah, this guy
Yeah, I
dropped
don't
an A.
think that he's an incorrigible youth. Personally, I don't think that the judge should rule he's incorrigible. So
No,
that's my view.
possibly not. But this expert has been a thrill to watch today. He literally dropped an egg to simulate head injury, and what the results of that would be. And then
This
tried
is
to
your
claim.
brain. This is your brain on drugs style.
Yes, yes, exactly. The judge was all
Okay.
freaked out. You're not going to drop that in my courtroom. And then he held up a ball that he was dropping in, and he's like, "Okay." Yeah, that was great. And then but he also tried to bake race into this, saying that if Ethan had been a black student, then he would have gotten essentially kicked out of school for his prior conduct, and everyone else would have been safe.
Perhaps. I don't know what that has to do with the price of tea in China when we're trying to figure out whether or not Ethan Crumbly himself is
I know,
incorrigible
right?
or not,
That's
or
the question,
unredeemable.
yeah.
I don't know whether or not a black student would be kicked out. What does that have to do with literally anything?
Nothing at all.
Okay,
And
just
that's
checking.
what the cross
Just
was really going at. And it was brought up on direct too. And I was like, why would you put that in the report? Because it just makes the rest of your report look incredible, right? And then of course they hammered on it in cross because it's
Yeah.
just not logical, and it doesn't go to anything with whether or not this child is at all redeemable.
Yeah.
Also, he never scanned. He didn't do any brain scans or anything like that. He met with the kid 6 times, but he didn't really do what I would consider a proper assessment.
Yeah, and as you kind of point out here in the banner, it's supposed to be rare, irreparable, corrupt. It's supposed to be, and that I just don't think we're in that territory. This is a kid who did something that's bad, something that's evil, something that is impulsive in youth and on the basis of depression, rather than, for example, the kid in Florida where it was pre-planned, Fucci, where it was pre-planned, it was well thought out. It was a design plan because he wanted to feel what death felt like. Apparently, picked basically a student essentially out of a phone book for all the purposes. Took the student down to a park and killed them in a pre-planned, thought out, methodical way. Now he's a kid, so he didn't necessarily cover his tracks very well, but every piece of evidence suggests that this kid, it wasn't impulsive. He wasn't beaten as a youth. He wasn't, there didn't seem to be signs of mental illness. It just seemed like he decided to kill because he wanted to. So he is in this category, not this guy. And I still don't think the parents should be charged. And I think the Court of Appeals is full of shit.
Well, we're on the same page all around. But yeah, no, we were just I thought they were going to finish, and then so the first two witnesses that the defense called was the the first one was the warden for the juvenile facility, and the next one was a psychologist. And I thought their testimony went really well in favor of this. All kids are essentially reformable to some extent, for the most part, except for very, very, very narrow exception. And then they called this guy, and this guy's been a disaster all day long. But I was hoping it was going to be ending.
We can end.
To be.
We can end. I just wanted to come as soon as I was available. So
yeah, no, I
came in the gym, walked in the door, and I thought, let's see if he's still on.
I have it's 3:00, and I have to be across town at 4, and so I was going to pick this back up again tomorrow, or not tomorrow, this evening, and then it sounds like this is still going on tomorrow as well. So I'll be back here again tomorrow. So at any point, I'll just keep sending you links if you want to jump in.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, but all right, I will. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone in chat, and then I'm going to throw up my little exit video, and I will see you all. You are going to be redirected to that GG Beach Killer, whatever guy, the expert, his press conference stuff. So you guys have fun there, and we'll see you in a bit.